Have you ever wondered what really happened to the most beautiful angel in heaven before he became the ultimate symbol of evil? The story of Lucifer isn't just some ancient fairy tale. It's a complex narrative that has shaped human understanding of good and evil for thousands of years, and the details might shock you. Most people think they know Lucifer's story, but what if I told you that almost everything you believe about the fallen angel is probably wrong? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most misunderstood figures in religious history, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why this story continues to captivate billions of people worldwide. Before we jump in, let me ask you something. When you hear the name Lucifer, what comes to mind? Red skin, horns, pitchfork, an evil mastermind plotting humanity's downfall? Well, prepare to have your mind blown, because the original Lucifer was nothing like that at all. The name Lucifer literally means light bearer, or morning star in Latin. This wasn't some demonic title. It was actually a name of honor and beauty. In the original Hebrew texts, the term used was Hillel, which means shining one. Picture this: the most radiant, magnificent being ever created, so beautiful that he literally glowed with divine light. But here's where it gets interesting. The story of Lucifer's fall isn't actually told in one neat, tidy narrative in religious texts. Instead, it's pieced together from various passages across different books, creating a complex puzzle that scholars have been debating for centuries. The most famous reference comes from the book of Isaiah, where it talks about the fall of the king of Babylon, using the metaphor of a morning star falling from heaven. But over time, this passage became associated with the story of Satan's rebellion. The book of Ezekiel also contains a similar passage about the king of Tyre, describing a perfect being in Eden who was corrupted by pride. Now let's talk about what Lucifer was like before his fall, because this is where the story gets absolutely fascinating. According to traditional interpretations, Lucifer wasn't just any angel. He was the highest of all created beings, often described as a cherub, which in the heavenly hierarchy was one of the most powerful types of angels. Imagine being the most beautiful, most intelligent, most gifted being in all of creation, second only to God himself. Lucifer had access to the very throne room of heaven. He was possibly the leader of heavenly worship, directing the cosmic choir of angels in praising the Almighty. Some traditions even suggest he had authority over other angels and played a crucial role in the administration of heaven itself. But here's the thing about perfection when it comes with free will. Even the most perfect being can make choices, and those choices have consequences. The traditional story tells us that Lucifer's downfall began with a single emotion: pride. Think about it from his perspective for a moment. You're the most magnificent being ever created, surrounded by constant praise and worship, wielding incredible power and authority. It might be easy to start thinking that maybe, just maybe, you deserve even more recognition. Maybe you deserve to be worshipped yourself. The rebellion, according to traditional accounts, wasn't a sudden emotional outburst. It was a calculated decision. Lucifer looked at his position and decided he wanted more. He wanted to be equal to God, or perhaps even replace God entirely. The famous passage often quoted is, "I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." But Lucifer didn't rebel alone. This is a crucial detail that often gets overlooked. The traditional story tells us that he convinced a third of the angels in heaven to join his rebellion. Think about that for a second. We're talking about billions upon billions of celestial beings choosing to follow Lucifer in his uprising against the creator of the universe. What kind of charisma and persuasive power must he have possessed to convince so many perfect beings to risk everything? This wasn't just a simple disagreement. This was cosmic civil war on a scale we can barely comprehend. The war in heaven, as it's often called, represents one of the most dramatic conflicts ever described. Perfect beings, created for harmony and worship, suddenly engaged in battle against their creator and against each other. The imagery is almost overwhelming to contemplate. Armies of angels clashing in the heavenly realms, with the fate of creation hanging in the balance. But here's where the story takes an even more intriguing turn. Despite all of Lucifer's power, intelligence, and the massive army he had assembled, the rebellion failed completely. Not only did it fail, but it failed quickly and decisively. This raises fascinating questions about the nature of power and authority in the cosmic order. The aftermath of the rebellion is where Lucifer transforms from the light bearer into something entirely different. Cast out of heaven along with his followers, he becomes Satan, which means adversary or accuser. The beautiful morning star becomes the prince of darkness, the ruler of hell, the enemy of everything good and holy. But even in defeat, Lucifer's story doesn't end. According to traditional accounts, his rebellion against God continues, but now it takes a different form. Unable to directly challenge God's authority in heaven, he turns his attention to God's newest creation, humanity. This is where the story connects to probably the most famous narrative in religious history, the temptation in the Garden of Eden. The serpent who tempts Eve is traditionally identified with Satan, formerly Lucifer. Think about the psychology here. Unable to defeat God directly, Lucifer seeks to corrupt God's beloved creation, to prove that even humans, made in God's image, can be turned against their creator. The strategy is brilliant in its simplicity. Just as pride led to Lucifer's downfall, he uses the same temptation on humanity. You can be like God, he tells Eve. It's the same lie he told himself, the same promise that led to his own destruction. What makes this story so compelling is how it explains the existence of evil in a world created by a perfect God. If God is all good and all-powerful, why does evil exist? The story of Lucifer provides an answer. Evil exists because free will exists, and free will means the possibility of choosing wrongly, even for the most perfect beings. But here's something most people don't realize. Different religious traditions tell this story differently. While Christianity has developed a detailed narrative about Lucifer's fall, Judaism has a much more limited discussion of this figure. Islam has its own version with Iblis, who refuses to bow to Adam and is cast out of paradise. Each tradition adds its own layers and interpretations to the basic narrative. The story has also evolved significantly over time, developed theological frameworks around the fall of Satan. Early Christian writers like Origen and Augustine that went far beyond what's explicitly stated in Scripture. Medieval writers like Dante created elaborate descriptions of hell and Satan's role there. John Milton's Paradise Lost gave us perhaps the most detailed and psychologically complex portrayal of Lucifer ever written, showing him as a tragic figure whose pride leads to his doom. Modern interpretations of the Lucifer story vary wildly. Some see it as literal historical fact, describing actual events that occurred in the spiritual realm. Others view it as symbolic, representing the human struggle between good and evil, pride and humility, obedience and rebellion. Still others interpret it psychologically, seeing Lucifer as representing the shadow side of human nature, the part of us that seeks to elevate ourselves above others and above moral law. What's fascinating is how this ancient story continues to resonate in contemporary culture. Lucifer appears in countless books, movies, TV shows, and songs. Sometimes he's portrayed as pure evil, other times as a misunderstood rebel fighting against an oppressive system. These different portrayals reflect our ongoing struggle to understand the nature of evil and rebellion. The story also raises profound questions about justice and mercy. If Lucifer was created perfect, was his fall inevitable? Could he have chosen differently? Is eternal punishment proportionate to his crime? These questions have occupied theologians and philosophers for centuries and continue to generate debate today. Some interpretations suggest that Lucifer's fall was necessary for the greater good, that without the existence of evil, free will would be meaningless and true goodness impossible. Others argue that this makes God complicit in evil, which contradicts the idea of divine perfection. The psychological aspects of Lucifer's story are equally compelling. Pride, the sin that traditionally led to his fall, is something every human being can relate to. We all have moments where we think we know better, where we want more recognition, where we resent authority. In that sense, Lucifer's story is humanity's story writ large. But there's another layer to consider, the story of redemption. While traditional Christianity teaches that Lucifer's fate is sealed, some have wondered whether even the fallen angel might someday be redeemed. This idea, called Universalism, suggests that God's love and mercy might eventually extend even to Satan himself. It's a controversial concept that challenges traditional notions of eternal damnation. The influence of Lucifer's story on human culture cannot be overstated. It has shaped our understanding of good and evil, influenced legal systems, inspired art and literature, and provided a framework for understanding human nature. The concept of the noble rebel, the beautiful villain, the tragic fall from grace, all of these archetypal ideas can be traced back to the story of Lucifer. Even today, as we grapple with questions of authority, rebellion, pride, and the nature of evil, the story of Lucifer remains relevant. Whether you believe it literally or see it as metaphor, it continues to offer insights into the human condition and the eternal struggle between good and evil. The story teaches us about the dangers of pride and the importance of humility. It warns us about the seductive nature of power and the way even the most gifted among us can fall. It reminds us that our choices have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for others around us. As we conclude this exploration of Lucifer's story, remember that regardless of your personal beliefs about its literal truth, this narrative has shaped human civilization for thousands of years. It continues to influence how we think about morality, justice, free will, and the nature of existence itself. The fallen angel's tale serves as both warning and inspiration, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, we still have the power to choose. And perhaps that's the most important lesson of all, that our choices, whether toward light or darkness, define who we become. What do you think about Lucifer's story? Does it change how you view the concepts of good and evil? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that have shaped human history and continue to influence our world today.